thrilling. If you eat this just 3 times a week, something remarkable begins to happen inside your body, especially around the most stubborn area for most people, belly fat. And before we go further, understand this clearly. No single food melts fat like magic. But science is very clear about this. Certain foods can strongly influence metabolism, insulin sensitivity, inflammation, and fat storage patterns in the body. And when you repeatedly support those systems, your body begins to shift in a noticeable way over time. Let's break it down in a way that makes sense biologically, not just emotionally. One of the most powerful foods you can add 3 times a week is something simple, affordable, and often underestimated: eggs. There is something happening inside your body right now that most people never think about, yet it is silently controlling whether your belly shrinks or expands over time. Every bite you take sends a signal, not just calories, but hormonal instructions. And one of the most powerful switches in that system is insulin. Insulin is often called the fat storage hormone, and for good reason. Whenever you eat carbohydrates, especially refined carbs like white bread, sugary cereals, pastries, or sweet drinks, your blood sugar rises rapidly. In response, your pancreas releases insulin to push that sugar out of your bloodstream and into your cells. But here's the part most people never hear clearly enough. Insulin doesn't just move sugar, it also tells your body to store fat. And when insulin is elevated too frequently throughout the day, your body enters a constant storage mode. Not burning, not releasing, but storing. And where does a large portion of that storage happen? Around the abdomen. This is not random. Belly fat is metabolically active tissue. It is extremely sensitive to hormonal signals, especially insulin and cortisol. And so when insulin is constantly high, your midsection becomes one of the primary storage zones. Now here is where something surprisingly simple begins to change the entire equation. Eggs. A basic food, but biologically powerful in ways most people underestimate. When you eat eggs, you are consuming one of the highest quality protein sources available in nature, and protein behaves very differently in the body compared to carbohydrates. Unlike sugar or refined starches, protein does not cause rapid spikes in blood glucose. Instead, it produces a slow, controlled response. This means insulin is released in a much more balanced, stable way. And stability is everything in metabolic health, because your body does not respond well to chaos. It responds to rhythm. When insulin spikes sharply again and again throughout the day, your cells gradually become less sensitive to it. This condition is known as insulin resistance. And insulin resistance is one of the strongest predictors of abdominal fat accumulation, metabolic syndrome, and long-term weight gain. But when meals are structured around high-quality protein like eggs, something remarkable begins to happen over time. Your blood sugar becomes smoother, your insulin response becomes calmer, and your cells begin to respond to insulin more efficiently again. In simple terms, your body becomes more sensitive to insulin in a healthy way, meaning it needs less of it to do the same job. And lower insulin levels, when sustained over time, signal your body to stop aggressively storing fat and start accessing stored energy more easily. But that is only part of the story. Eggs also dramatically influence satiety, the feeling of fullness. Inside your gut and brain, there are powerful hunger-regulating hormones like ghrelin and peptide YY. Ghrelin tells you when to eat. Peptide YY tells you when to stop. Refined carbohydrates tend to spike ghrelin shortly after consumption, which is why people often feel hungry again just a short time after eating bread or sugary foods. But protein-rich foods like eggs do something different. They suppress ghrelin more effectively and increase satiety hormones for longer periods of time. This means you naturally eat less without feeling deprived, and that is a critical detail because most weight gain does not come from lack of knowledge. It comes from constant biological hunger signals that are difficult to ignore. Now imagine starting your day with eggs instead of a refined carbohydrate breakfast. Instead of a glucose spike followed by a crash, your body experiences steady energy, stable insulin, and reduced hunger signals for hours. That alone changes the trajectory of an entire day of eating. But let's go even deeper into what is happening at the cellular level. Inside your muscles and liver, there are tiny storage molecules called glycogen. When glycogen stores are full, excess glucose is more likely to be converted into fat. But when your diet is constantly pushing excess sugar into the system, those stores overflow repeatedly. Eggs help interrupt that cycle because they provide energy without overwhelming the glucose storage system. They reduce the metabolic pressure that leads to fat conversion in the first place. And over time, this reduces the constant overflow state that drives fat accumulation around the waist. There's also another hidden mechanism at play: diet-induced thermogenesis. Your body actually burns calories just digesting food. But not all foods are equal in this effect. Protein has the highest thermic effect of all macronutrients. This means that a significant portion of the calories from eggs is used just to digest and metabolize them. Some estimates suggest that protein can increase energy expenditure during digestion by up to 20–30% compared to much lower values for fats and carbohydrates. So even at rest, your body is working harder metabolically when protein is part of the diet. Now connect all of this together: stable insulin response, reduced fat storage signaling, improved satiety hormones, lower overall calorie intake without conscious restriction, and increased energy expenditure during digestion. This is not a miracle, this is physiology. And when physiology shifts in the right direction, results follow naturally over time. But perhaps the most powerful part of this entire process is not what happens in a single meal, but what happens when this pattern is repeated. Because your metabolism is not fixed, it is adaptive. Every meal is a message. And when you repeatedly send the message of stability, balance, and nutrient-dense protein intake, your body gradually adapts to that environment. Insulin sensitivity improves, cravings decrease, energy stabilizes, and fat storage becomes less dominant, especially in the abdominal region. This is why something as simple as eating eggs a few times per week can create visible changes over time. Not because of magic, but because of consistent biological signaling. And in a world where most people are unknowingly sending constant store fat signals through processed foods, sugar, and irregular eating patterns, introducing a simple, structured, protein-rich habit can quietly shift the entire system in the opposite direction. Not overnight, but steadily and powerfully, because your body is always listening. The only question is not what signals are you feeding it most often? Right now, deep inside your body, there are two silent systems working every second of your life to determine whether you feel energetic, burn fat efficiently, or slowly accumulate stubborn belly fat over time. One is your liver. The other is something most people have never even been taught to think about in school: your mitochondria. And when these two systems start slowing down, even slightly, your entire metabolism begins to shift in a direction you do not want. Fat starts to linger longer, energy drops earlier in the day, and your body becomes less efficient at using stored fuel. But what most people never realize is this: these systems are not fixed. They are highly responsive to nutrition. And one of the most overlooked but scientifically important foods that influences both liver function and mitochondrial energy production is something extremely simple: eggs. Now it might sound ordinary, but inside that simple food is a dense concentration of nutrients that directly participate in the most fundamental energy processes in your body. Let's start with the liver. Your liver is not just an organ, it is your metabolic control center. It decides how nutrients are processed, whether fat is stored or burned, and how toxins are neutralized and removed from your system. Every single thing you eat passes through its regulation, and when your liver becomes overloaded by excessive sugar, processed oils, alcohol, or constant snacking, it begins to lose efficiency. When that happens, fat metabolism slows down, and one of the earliest places this imbalance shows up is around the abdomen. Now, here is where eggs play a crucial role that science has studied extensively. Eggs are one of the richest dietary sources of a nutrient called choline. Choline is not optional for your liver, it is essential. Without adequate choline, your liver struggles to package and export fat properly. When that process becomes inefficient, fat begins to accumulate within liver cells, and metabolic function starts to decline. But when choline intake is sufficient, the liver can package fats into lipoproteins and transport them efficiently throughout the body instead of letting them build up internally. This is not theory, this is biochemistry, and it matters because when your liver is functioning smoothly, your entire fat-burning system becomes more stable. Now move deeper into the cell. Inside almost every cell in your body are tiny structures called mitochondria. They are often described as the power plants of the cell, but that description barely captures their importance. Mitochondria are where your food becomes usable energy. Every movement, every heartbeat, every thought you have depends on them. When mitochondria are efficient, your body converts nutrients into energy cleanly. When they are inefficient, energy production becomes sluggish and more fuel is diverted towards storage rather than use. That is when fatigue increases. That is when cravings rise. And that is when fat accumulation becomes easier. Now here is where eggs again become biologically significant. Eggs contain several B vitamins, especially B2, B5, B12, and biotin that are directly involved in mitochondrial energy metabolism. These vitamins act like cofactors in the biochemical reactions that convert food into ATP, the energy currency of your cells. Without them, those energy pathways slow down. But when they are consistently available through nutrient-dense foods like eggs, mitochondrial efficiency improves. And this is not just about feeling more energetic. It is about metabolic output. Because when mitochondria are working efficiently, your body becomes more likely to use fat as fuel instead of storing it. Now think about the modern diet for a moment. Many people are consuming highly processed foods that are calorie-dense but nutrient-poor. That means the body receives energy but lacks the micronutrients needed to process that energy efficiently. So what happens? Energy becomes unstable. The liver becomes overburdened, and mitochondria operate below optimal capacity. This creates a metabolic environment where fat storage becomes more likely, even if calorie intake is not extremely high. This is one of the most misunderstood aspects of body composition today. It is not just about how much you eat. It is about how efficiently your body can process what you eat. Now, imagine introducing a simple habit 3 times a week: eggs. Not as a dramatic intervention, but as a consistent nutritional signal. Each time you consume them, you are supplying your body with choline for liver support and B vitamins for mitochondrial energy production. And over time, something subtle but powerful begins to happen. Your liver operates with less strain. Fat transport becomes more efficient. Cellular energy production becomes more stable. And your metabolic system begins to shift toward better fuel utilization. But there is another layer most people overlook entirely. Mitochondria are highly sensitive to oxidative stress. When inflammation or oxidative damage builds up in the body, mitochondria become less efficient. They produce less energy and generate more metabolic waste. Eggs contain antioxidants such as lutein and zeaxanthin, which help reduce oxidative stress in the body. While they are often discussed in relation to eye health, their broader role in reducing cellular damage is equally important. Because when oxidative stress decreases, mitochondrial function becomes more stable. And when mitochondrial function stabilizes, your energy levels become more predictable. No more sudden crashes, no more constant fatigue cycles, just more consistent metabolic performance. Now, connect the liver and mitochondria together. Your liver processes nutrients. Your mitochondria convert those nutrients into usable energy. When both systems are functioning efficiently, your body becomes metabolically flexible. That means it can switch between using glucose and stored fat more effectively depending on what is available. But when either system is impaired, even slightly, that flexibility decreases. And when flexibility decreases, fat storage becomes more dominant, especially around the abdominal region, which is highly sensitive to metabolic and hormonal shifts. This is why supporting both liver function and mitochondrial health is not just a detail. It is central to how your body regulates weight and energy. And this is where the simplicity of eggs becomes powerful, because instead of requiring complicated supplements or extreme diets, you are using a whole food that naturally contains multiple nutrients targeting multiple metabolic systems at once. Choline for fat transport, B vitamins for energy conversion, antioxidants for cellular protection, and high-quality protein for sustained metabolic support. But the most important part is not the food itself, it is the consistency. Because your metabolism does not transform from occasional actions. It adapts to repeated patterns. 3 times a week is enough to create a recurring nutritional signal. A signal that tells your liver it has support. A signal that tells your mitochondria they have the raw materials to function properly. And over time, your body begins to respond to that environment. Energy stabilizes. Fat processing improves, and metabolic efficiency increases, not because of a single meal, but because of repeated biological reinforcement. And that is the quiet truth most people miss. Transformation is not loud, it is not sudden. It is the result of small, consistent inputs that gradually reshape how your internal systems function. And when those systems begin to function more efficiently, the external changes, like reduced belly fat and improved energy, follow naturally, not as a surprise, but as a consequence of biology finally being supported the way it was designed to be. Most people completely misunderstand why their body changes, or more importantly, why it doesn't. They think transformation is about doing something extreme for a short burst of time. Cutting carbs completely, starving themselves, jumping into intense workouts, or chasing the next fat-burning trick they saw online. But your body does not respond to intensity. It responds to repetition. And this is where everything changes, because inside your body, there is a system far more powerful than any diet trend. And it is constantly listening, not to what you do once in a while, but to what you do again and again. Every meal is a signal. And when that signal repeats consistently over time, your body begins to adapt to it as a new normal. Now imagine eating eggs 3 times a week. It sounds simple, almost too simple to matter, but biologically, repetition is exactly what your metabolism understands. When you consume a protein-rich, nutrient-dense food like eggs regularly, your body is not just processing calories in isolation. It is interpreting a pattern, a predictable source of amino acids, a steady supply of micronutrients, a repeated signal of nutritional stability. And stability in biological terms is safety. When your body senses nutritional stability, it stops operating in survival mode, because survival mode is where fat storage increases. Survival mode is where cravings intensify. Survival mode is where your metabolism becomes less flexible and more conservative with energy use. But when the same supportive nutrients appear consistently, your body begins to shift out of that stress-driven pattern. And this shift does not happen overnight. It happens gradually through repetition. Now think about what most people do instead. One day they eat a high-protein breakfast. The next day it's sugar and refined carbs, then skipping meals, then overeating at night. From a biological perspective, this is chaos, and a chaotic environment forces the body to stay alert. When the body is constantly uncertain about when or what it will be fed, it becomes more likely to store energy rather than release it. Because from an evolutionary standpoint, uncertainty equals survival risk. So the body protects itself by holding on to reserves, especially around the abdomen, where visceral fat can accumulate more easily under stress-related hormonal influence. Now here is where consistency becomes powerful in a completely different way. When you eat eggs 3 times a week, you are not just adding protein to your diet, you are introducing predictability into your metabolism, and predictability reduces metabolic stress. Over time, this can influence several key systems in the body. Appetite regulation begins to stabilize because protein-rich meals help regulate hunger hormones like ghrelin, reducing erratic hunger spikes. Blood sugar responses become smoother because protein slows gastric emptying and reduces rapid glucose fluctuations. Energy levels become more consistent because stable blood sugar reduces the crash and burn cycle that many people experience after carbohydrate-heavy meals. And perhaps most importantly, fat storage signals begin to quiet down because insulin responses are less frequently spiking to extreme levels. But none of this happens from eating eggs once, or twice, or as a 1-week experiment. Your physiology is not reactive to novelty, it is reactive to patterns. And patterns require time. This is where many people lose progress without realizing it. They expect immediate results from isolated healthy meals. But the body does not rewrite its metabolic programming based on occasional good decisions. It responds when those decisions become predictable enough to be recognized as a stable environment. Now consider what happens internally when eggs are consistently included in the diet. Each serving delivers high-quality protein, which is broken down into amino acids that are used for muscle maintenance, enzyme production, and hormone regulation. This matters because muscle tissue is metabolically active. The more efficiently your body maintains lean muscle, the higher your resting energy expenditure becomes. Even small improvements in muscle preservation can influence how many calories your body burns at rest. But again, this is not about a single meal effect. It is about accumulation over time. 3 times a week may not feel significant in the moment, but metabolically it creates a recurring input that supports protein synthesis pathways repeatedly across the week. And repetition strengthens physiological efficiency. There is also another subtle but important mechanism at play: dietary rhythm. When your body receives similar nutrient profiles at regular intervals, it begins to anticipate them. Digestive enzymes, hormonal responses, and metabolic pathways become more efficient through adaptation. This is similar to how training works in exercise. The body improves not just because of effort, but because of repeated exposure. Your metabolism works the same way. Now let's connect this to belly fat specifically. Abdominal fat is not just stored energy. It is hormonally active tissue influenced by insulin, cortisol, and chronic dietary patterns. When insulin spikes frequently due to inconsistent eating habits and high sugar intake, fat storage signals increase. When cortisol remains elevated due to stress and unstable blood sugar, abdominal fat storage becomes more likely. But when meals become more structured, predictable, and protein-supported, these hormonal fluctuations begin to stabilize. Eggs contribute to this stability by providing a nutrient-dense, low-glycemic food source that does not provoke extreme insulin swings. And when insulin responses are calmer across the week, not just in a single meal window, the body gradually shifts toward improved metabolic balance. But here is the part most people overlook. It is not just what you eat. It is what you stop doing because of what you eat. When protein-rich meals like eggs are included regularly, People naturally reduce their intake of highly processed snacks, sugary foods, and refined carbohydrates without conscious restriction. This is not discipline. This is physiology. Protein increases satiety. Satiety reduces cravings. Reduced cravings lower impulsive eating. And lower impulsive eating reduces overall energy surplus. Over time, this creates the conditions needed for gradual fat loss, not through force, but through reduced internal pressure. And all of this begins with repetition. 3 times a week is not a random number. It is enough frequency to create a consistent biological pattern without requiring extreme dietary change. It is sustainable. And sustainability is what the body actually responds to, because the human metabolism is not designed for extremes. It is designed for adaptation over time. Now zoom out and look at the bigger picture. Every repeated healthy choice becomes a message to your body, a message that says nutrition is stable, energy is available, survival stress is reduced. And when enough of these messages accumulate over weeks and months, your body begins to adjust its baseline behavior. Appetite becomes more regulated, energy becomes more predictable, and fat storage becomes less dominant in daily metabolic processes. This is why some changes appear subtle at first, because your body is recalibrating its internal expectations, and recalibration is not loud. It is gradual, almost invisible in the beginning, but over time it becomes undeniable. This is the real science behind transformation that most people never hear explained clearly. Not hacks, not shortcuts, but repeated biological signals shaping metabolic behavior. And when a simple food like eggs is consistently used as part of that pattern, it becomes less about nutrition alone and more about communication with your metabolism, because your body is always responding. The only question is whether the message it receives is chaotic and inconsistent or steady and supportive enough to build lasting change from within.